All right, so today's webinar, we're going to be going over recipe costing cards. We're going to be in a demo system focused on batch recipes and item recipes, and then I'll give you guys, little tips and tricks that you can use under recipe costing cards. So I'm going to sign into restaurantsystemspro.net, and then from here, we're going to be mainly focusing in the food systems. So it's the same exact concept for beverage and retail systems, just different recipes or different products. So I'm going to go to food systems, and then from here, I'm going to go to recipe costing cards. So before we actually dive into recipe costing cards, I'm going to go ahead and explain to you what's the easiest way to start with your recipe costing cards. So if you have nothing written down, the best way to go about recipe costing cards would be to grab your menu, grab a notepad and a pen, and you're going to write down for every single item recipe or every single plate itself, you're going to write down every batch recipe that's within the item recipe. So we have two different types of recipe costing cards in Restaurant Systems Pro. The first recipe costing card is going to be a batch recipe, and the second one is going to be an item recipe. The easiest way to explain this is your item recipe is what's on your menu itself. So for example, if you guys sell a cheeseburger with a side of fries and homemade ketchup, that cheeseburger with a side of fries and homemade ketchup would be the item recipe itself, and the homemade ketchup would be the actual batch recipe. Also, something that you have to keep in mind is, although this isn't necessarily a recipe in general, you will have to create recipe costing cards for things by the volume. So, for example, a cup of flour weighs completely differently than a cup of sugar. So that being said, you're going to have to weigh out, if you guys use a cup of flour, for example, you're going to have to weigh out what an actual cup of flour weighs and then create a recipe costing card for that. All right. Any questions on the differences of recipe costing cards? And the biggest thing with recipe costing cards that I'd say is you always want to start with your batch recipes. So anything that you make in the back of the house, and then you should move on to the item recipes in Restaurant Systems Pro. You'll find if you start with the item recipes, or if you don't enter all of your batch recipes first, you're going to have to keep going back and forth. And so it eliminates that process. All right, so on the left side of my screen, I have two recipe costing cards, and this is going to be a batch recipe. And then I also have an item recipe to show you guys, and we'll go over both of those. So I'm going to open up my recipe costing card page on restaurantsystemspro.net, and this is what the page looks like. Up on the very top left-hand corner, you have an ingredient name. So this is a drop-down box for you to filter. The way that this filter goes is going to be products are first, and then recipe costing cards. On the very bottom is then your groups. To the right of that, you have recipe types. You can filter just item recipes or just batch recipes. And then under menu category, there's a drop-down box. So when we originally set you up, we went online and search for your menu, and we went ahead and entered all of your menu categories. So this is a drop-down box you can filter for your menu categories. Below this drop-down box, we have inactive recipes as well as deleted recipes. Just know, only site admins can completely delete recipe costing cards. All right, and then anytime you hear me say bottom grid, this is what I'm referring to in the very bottom. We'll go over that last. So what we're going to do first is we're going to enter a batch recipe costing card in the system. Also, I did mention volume recipes, but I did not mention recipes like, for example, if in your walk-in cooler, if you guys prep out all of your chopped lettuce in a 6-pan, then you should create a recipe costing card for that. All right. So we're going to go into recipe costing cards, and on the bottom grid, we're going to hit the plus sign. Again, we're going to start with batch recipes. So the very first thing that we're going to do is under recipe type, there's going to be a drop-down box, and then from there, you're going to select batch recipe. Make sure if you're creating a recipe that you click on this checkbox next to active, and you go ahead and select it as active. Under cook's name, I've had people use this a couple different ways. I've had people enter the actual cook's name. I've had people enter the person who's entering this recipe's name, so whether that be just a hostess in your restaurant that's helping you out with that, or I've had people leave it blank. So that's completely up to you and what you'd like to do. So I'm going to go ahead and select Fred Langley, and then recipe name. So I'm going to go ahead and name this CS Onion Relish Compote. And what I do suggest, I know we're on batch recipes, but for item recipes, I do suggest you try to name them the same as your POS system. Now, if your POS system is abbreviated, it has a lot of abbreviations, it's a little bit harder to do that. And then under category, there's a drop-down box for you to select your cost of goods sold category. So I'm going to select food. There's a date range icon. Do not change that date range icon. It's just an indicator for everyone to be able to identify what day this actual recipe was created. So if I go into a system and I see a recipe was created on, in 2015, I'm going to ask them if they need to update that or not. We have key item report. That's anything that you want to track daily. And then prep item. If you want to go ahead and do one of these, you just select them. Now with prep item, even in food systems and under products, when you select it, it's going to generate with a text box. What this text box is asking you how many different locations you'd like to add this in. For me, I don't want to add this specific item into prep items into the prep sheet just yet. So I'm going to deselect that, but that's what this box means. Now I'm going to hit save. Excuse me. So when I hit save, the rest of this page populates. You can see it generated with all of these different windows. So we're going to go through each of these one by one. And just know my page is split right now, and so my screen looks a little bit different than what Recipe Costing Cards typically does. It typically looks like this when you're on a fuller screen. So in the very middle of the screen, you see Recipe Costing Details. Oops. So Recipe Costing Details has a plus sign. This is where we're going to add all of our ingredients. So if you look at the left side of my screen, I have all of my ingredients right over here. So I have all of my ingredients right over here. And then also I have my recipe quantity as well as my quantity note, and I'll show you guys the difference in a few seconds. So what we're going to do now is we're going to start adding our ingredients into our recipe costing card. What you want to do is you want to hit the plus sign on the bottom grid. And then from there, it's going to give you a couple different things that you need to fill out. The first thing is ingredient. Again, batch recipes can go within a batch recipe. You can also inventory a batch recipe, but an item recipe can't go into a batch recipe. So just a heads up with that. The first item is onion yellow. So I'm going to type in onion. And then from there, it generates with all of my onions. Now, if you set up your system accurately, you should have an onion group if you buy from multiple different vendors. Anytime you're adding products into recipe costing cards, I suggest that you use the group instead of the actual original product. And that way, no matter what, no matter if you purchase a new one or not, if you continue adding into that group, every single recipe costing card that uses that item will be always up to date with the correct price. So I'm going to select my onion group, and again, remember that groups will always be on the very bottom of the filter, recipes will be in the middle, and then products will be up on the very top. Under quantity, so you can see when you're using a group, it automatically generates to be used by the usage unit for whatever, whatever you set up that product or that group to be the usage unit. For this specific item, it's by the ounce. So this recipe calls for, if you look right over here, 80 ounces. So I'm going to type in 80. Product knowledge, that's actually in your actual, let me show you. It's in the product setup page. So I'm going to go to products under food systems. And if I double click on a product, there's a box that's called product knowledge. Now you can enter if it's locally grown, if it's organic, whatever it may be. But that's what that that's what on the recipe costing card this product knowledge generates from. Quantity note. So we're using 80 ounces, but 80 ounces, if you look, is 5 pounds. Now the chef or whoever's looking at this recipe costing card when you print it out will only see the quantity note. So I like to convert it. If it's 80 ounces, that's 5 pounds. So I'm going to enter that into my quantity note. And again, that's all your chef will see when you print off this recipe. They will not be able to see this part at all. And then from here, I'm going to go ahead and click Save. And you would continue doing that with all of your products. So I'm going to click on the plus sign again. I'm going to type in butter. And if I have a group of butter, I'm going to go ahead and use that. For this specific item, it's not grouped. So I'm going to select the one I want to use. From there, if it's a product and not a grouped item, you're going to see a drop-down box. And it's going to allow you to select a unit of how you want to count it. So I have my usage unit, my storage unit, and my purchase unit. So if I click on the storage unit, you can see it's by the 1 pound. And then my purchase unit is by the case of 36 pounds. This is however you set the product up on this main product edit screen. So on this specific item, it calls for 4 ounces of butter. So I'm going to use the usage unit. I'm going to type in 4, and then there's no conversion to 4 ounces of butter. So I'm just going to type in 4 ounces under the quantity note. You can see it's unsalted sweet cream butter. I'm going to hit save. And then from there, again, I'm going to continue on. While I'm doing this, does anyone have any questions or concerns? And you can see because the vinegar is by the fluid ounce, you can see it's set up by the fluid ounce. 4 ounces is half of a cup, and that's the reason why I could convert it in this specific item and not the butter. I'm going to go ahead and continue entering the rest of these products. Give me 1 moment, but feel free to ask me any questions if you have any. Also, a quick tip is if you're not a back-of-the-house person, for example, if you actually go onto Google and type in cups to fluid ounces, for example, it will give you this conversion. You can do this with pretty much everything, ounces to pounds, whatever it may be. It just has to be volume to volume, weight to weight, just like our recipe costing cards. All right, so once I'm done entering the ingredient, you can see this is what the page looks like. Now, I went ahead and made a mistake in this recipe costing card just to show you. Once I'm done entering all of my ingredients, the very first thing I'm going to do is look at this total on the very bottom. So you can see this specific item says $21.63. You should have, and it's okay if you don't, but you should have a rough idea of where that recipe stands price-wise. And if it seems high to you or seems too low, I'm going to further look into it. The easiest way to do this after I've looked at the total cost down here would be to look at the total amount under each individual item. So you can see automatically sticks out to me that the ketchup says it's $18.74, and I only used 4 fluid ounces of that. Now that I've identified that there's an issue, I'm going to double click on the product and figure out as to why. So for this specific item, it's a number 10 can of ketchup. The original product that I selected is by the each. So I'm saying, even though I used half of a cup or 4 fluid ounces, I accidentally put that I'm using 4 number 10 cans. What I'm going to do, or what you're going to have to do, is you're either going to have to convert this product to be by the fluid ounce, or I actually have a different product already in the system that's converted by the fluid ounce. Now, technically, though, please note, I would go ahead and convert the one that's by the each by the fluid ounce and then group them together. I'm going to go ahead and save that, and you'll see the price dramatically went down. It's now 16 cents for 4 fluid ounces and $3 total for the CS onion relish compote. So there's a couple other things that I need to fill out after I've entered my ingredients and I've identified that they're accurate. I'm going to, below the recipe costing details, right over here, you have a few things that you need to fill out. And this is where you're going to fill out your yield. So the first thing that you're going to do is the batch. That's how much this recipe makes. So we weighed out this recipe after it's been cooked and figured out that it makes 20 ounces of CS onion relish compote. So I'm going to write 20 ounces right over here. The quantity, that's going to be a text box. I'm going to type in 20, and there's a drop-down box. And then from here, you're able to select what this actually is. So for this specific item, it's 20 ounces. And there should be a unit size or a measurement for every single thing that you need. Now the storage unit, this one's a little bit more flexible. If I wanted to inventory it by the pound, I can go ahead and make the storage unit by the pound. I try to think about how I'd like to inventory these items when I'm entering this into the recipe costing card. What I would rather do though is I would rather go ahead and weigh out whatever I store this in, and we're going to store it in a 6-pan and put the description as a 6-pan. I weighed out the 6-pan and figured out that we use about 30 ounces. So I'm going to type in 30, and on the unit, I'm going to type in ounces. So now I created the recipe costing card. It makes 20 ounces total, but I store it in a 6-pan that stores it in a 30-ounce container. That's 30 ounces in that container. And then my portion of this is 1 ounce, since that's my portion size. So I will type in 1 ounce and do the same exact thing. All right, now it has 3 different ways to use it, and I'm going to hit calculate and save down over here. Now when you calculate and save, it should automatically generate with the cost for you. You can see I now have the cost, and then the next step is to the right of that. Oh, by the way, guys, when you see the cost generate under the storage unit in the portion, that's how you know it saved your unit sizes. But on the right side, it gives you an option to take a photo and upload it. So I'm going to click upload and select my file. Give me 1 moment. And now when I print out this recipe, or whoever views this recipe, they know exactly what the onions should look like cooked. Scrolling down, we have recipe cards. This is where you enter your build chart, your mise en place, your notes, preparation notes, recipe instructions. You do not have to use all of these columns. You can leave it blank if you don't want to use them all. I've had people use every single one of them, or I've had people use put all of their instructions and notes under one section. So that's completely up to you. I will say I try to keep things consistent throughout my entire system, and so just a heads up with that. So I'm going to scroll down, and then I'm going to start entering my recipe instructions and recipe notes. So under recipe instructions, what I do suggest is if there's any allergies, for example, in this specific item, or it contains peanuts or whatever it may be, I suggest you do a bunch of asterisks, and then in all caps, write contains peanuts, for example. And that way it's the very first thing that the servers will see when they're creating this recipe costing card. So now all I have to do is under the recipe instructions and recipe notes, I'm going to go ahead and type in my notes and instructions. All right, once you're done adding the recipe instructions, I'm going to hit save. Now, the last thing I want to show you guys, give me 1 second. Let me go ahead and copy and paste the link real quick. All right, so the very last thing that you can do is you can actually enter or upload a video onto youtube.com or whatever site you like, and there's an option for you to select it as unlisted. So what that means on YouTube is basically someone that does not have the link will not be able to see it on public YouTube. Only people that can have the actual link to it or have it, got sent an email with it, whatever it may be, will be able to actually see this. So I'm going to go ahead and paste that link onto this recipe QR code section. I'm going to save the QR code, and then I'm going to hit generate QR code. From there, it automatically generates with this QR code. Now, I know with an Android, you're going to have to download a different app, but for iPhone, if you actually take out your camera, and if you hover your mouse over your camera, or hover your phone over your camera, it automatically brings up the link for you. When you open up that link, it automatically generates with the video for you. And then that way, obviously, they're not going to watch that video when they're, during a rush or whatever it may be, but they can watch it while they're training. So that's how you enter a batch recipe costing card. Before I move on, there's a couple other things that I want to show you. Under recipe costing details, there's an eyeball icon. So when you click on the eyeball icon, and let's say that you're clicking on it under product, it will generate with that product. You can fix it from here if there's an error with that product. Also, with recipe costing cards, you can do the same. It just redirects you to the recipe instead of the actual product. Above that, we have this bottom grid right over here. And it gives you a couple different things that you can do. You can view location, and this is adding that specific item into your inventory location. You can view history. So anyone that touches this recipe, you'll be able to see the history of it and what they changed. And then you can clone a recipe from one system to the, you can clone a recipe. So for example, if I'm a pizza restaurant and my dough, my marinara sauce, and my cheese is the exact same, it's just the toppings are different, you can take that original recipe and start cloning it and then adjusting the price to it and adjusting the ingredients and the name of it by using this clone icon. We have the save and new. So once I'm done with this recipe, I can just click on save and new, and it brings me to another recipe costing card page. On the bottom of this, you have generate training card and generate recipe card. So the two differences with these, let me go ahead and generate one in 1 moment. Training card, that's going to be for front of the house. All they need to know is they have a photo, they have the product knowledge, the ingredient, and then the instructions. But for recipe card, it's a little bit different. Your chef, this is for the back of the house, will be able to see the quantity note, they'll be able to see recipe instructions, notes, fill chart, basically everything within the actual recipe costing card. Any questions so far? All right. So I'm going to go ahead and up on the top right-hand corner, I'm going to hit Save and New. We're going to move on to our item recipe costing cards. Again, item recipes are your actual menu items itself. So the item recipe that we have is called Bacon Cheeseburger Special. Again, I'm going to fill out all of this information on the very top. Our item recipe, I'm going to select that one. I'm going to select it as active. Cook's name, I'm going to select Fred Langley. Recipe name will be Bacon Cheeseburger Special. And again, for item recipes, I do suggest that you name them whatever your actual menu says, whatever your actual POS says. The menu category for this one will be sandwich and burger. PLU number. You do not have to have a PLU number to utilize this, but the PLU number is going to be a product lookup number, and that's from your POS system. I'm going to save this so the rest of my page generates. Again, now under recipe costing details, I'm going to click on the plus sign and same exact thing. I'm going to start entering my ingredient name. I'm going to select my unit, so how I want to count it. This specific item is a patty, and you can see that the usage unit is a 5.3 ounce, and I know that that's one patty. So if I use one of them, I'll enter my quantity note as 1, and then I will enter my quantities and multiples of as 1, and my quantity note as 1 patty. And then hit save and continue doing that for the rest of your items. You can see for this specific item that I'm about to add, it's single leaf lettuce recipe. We figured out the weight of one recipe, and that way every single recipe we can easily just enter one leaf if that's all we use. So although it might take you a second just to go ahead and create that recipe and weigh out one leaf of lettuce, it's easier just to get that done, and then that way you can continue using that for all of your different burgers. All right, so once I've entered my actual product information, so my ingredients, now I can move on to the next step. The next step with this recipe costing card is going to be underneath that. You can see it's $3.96. Again, use the total cost to help you identify if there is an error with your recipe costing card. From here, under current price, so you can see a couple different things. My total cost of this was $3.96. My target food cost percentage for food is going to be 24.5%. And in order to hit that food cost percentage, I would have to sell this for $16.18. This is going to be up to you if you want to use that potential price to hit your food cost percentage or not. For us, we know that this specific restaurant, we probably won't be able to sell that burger for $16.18, but we think that we're going to be able to sell it for $14.95, which that is the current price. So I'm going to enter my current price, and I'm going to hit calculate. From there, it gives me my food cost percentage. Okay, so this specific item's food cost percentage is 26.52% with that current price that I'm selling it for. I'm making $10.99, so basically $11 each burger. That's going to be up to you if you want to continue selling it for that price or not. Cash is king, and that's something that you have to remember. So I'm going to go ahead and leave that since we do make $12 each burger. To the right of that, I have where I can upload my photo. I'm going to hit upload, select my file, and then from there, double click on the photo. So my apologies. I know this is an example that I'm giving you guys right now, but what I do suggest that is you take the photo from the plate up, and that way you can see how it should be plated. Now, all I have to do is enter my recipe notes, and then as well as my QR code. Same exact thing. You can use every single section, or you can just go ahead and do one. Give me one moment. I'm going to go ahead and type that all out. All right, once I'm done with my instructions and notes, I'm going to hit save. And then from there, you can go ahead and generate the QR code if you have one. So I'm going to paste my link from YouTube onto this QR code. I'm going to save the QR code. And again, when I save it, I'm going to hit generate QR code. And that way, now whoever sees this recipe cost card can pull out their phone and they can go ahead and automatically start watching that video on how to create this actual burger. The last thing on this page is that generate training card and generate recipe costing card page. Again, same exact thing. Training card is for your front of the house. So you can see all they see is the product knowledge. And then back of the house is going to be the recipe card. They can see quantity notes, recipe instructions, recipe notes, built chart, mise en place, prep instructions, all of that good stuff. Any questions? All right, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to scroll up, and I did want to show you because I didn't show you on the other recipe. When you click on the eyeball icon under the action column for a recipe, it generates with this view recipe page. If you want to look further into that recipe, you can click on view details and edit. And then that way you can adjust this recipe if it's wrong, and then still hit back to previous page for it to go back to this previous page. It just eliminates the process of having to go back and keep searching for that recipe and whatnot. So I'm going to get out of this page completely, and then there's a couple other things that I want to show you. So if, for example, if I was buying a product from Shamrock and I will no longer ever be using that item from Shamrock, I will only be using it from Cisco, for example, there's a way to replace all. So what we want to do if you want to replace all, or let's say, for example, that you're using American cheese for all of your recipe costing cards, but you're using the original product itself and not the actual group, and then now you have a group, so you want to replace them all at once. So the same exact reason why you would use this icon. Under ingredient name, the first thing I want to do is type in my product. Select the product and hit search. From there, when you do that, you can see all of my recipe costing cards that contain this specific item generated for me. I'm going to select this drop-down box since there is 28. You can see right over here, there's 28 of them. And I want to see all of them at once, so I'm going to hit this drop-down and select 50 items per page. And now I'm going to hit the select all icon. Now, when I've selected all, every single recipe that I want to replace the ingredient from is going to be blue. Now, on the very bottom grid, there's an icon with two arrow icons going opposite direction. I'm going to click on the icon, and then from there, it gives me this replace ingredient icon. On the left side, you're going to select the original product. So for us, we were originally using Cisco, but now we will be using Shamrock. And I'm not going to group this item because I'm never going to buy from Cisco, that specific item from Cisco again. On the right side, I'm going to select the item that I'm going to be using moving forward. For this one, it's the Shamrock one. Please note, if you're going to be replacing an ingredient with the group will only be allowed to use in your recipe costing cards by the usage unit. So if you're originally using a recipe costing card by the storage unit and you replace it with the group, you have to pay attention and convert the recipe. I'm now going to select all and then hit replace. Now, what I just did is I just replaced 28 recipes at once with all of the with all of the CVP chicken breast, and that way I didn't have to individually go through them. Any questions? All right, a couple other things that I want to show you before we're done. There's a refresh icon in the top right-hand corner, and there's an export item recipe. That way you can export all of your item recipes at once. On the very bottom grid, we have a plus sign to add a new recipe, and if you hover your mouse over any of these, it will generate with exactly what they are. I have an inactive recipe, so I can select the recipe one time and make it inactive, or I can select the recipe one time and delete it. If you're on a tablet, for example, you can't double-click, or on an iPhone or Android, you can't double-click, so you have to click on it one time and hit the edit icon. We have a location icon. So yes, you can enter the location within the batch recipe itself using this icon right over here. But you can also do it on this main recipe costing card page for batch recipes. I select it one time, hit the location geotag, and then it allows me to add it from here. That replace all ingredient, which we just used. I have copy. This is copying over your recipe costing cards from one system to the other. Please note, if you're going to use this, if, for example, you have two locations and they use completely different products, then they're going to create, when I copy it over, it would create all those products brand new in the other system. So sometimes it's best just not to use it. It just depends on your restaurant. I have an export PDF icon. I have an export Excel icon. And if you want to generate or print out all of your recipe costing cards at once, you can actually select all. You have to do it by page, actually. So I do suggest if you do it this way that you change the numbers per page. And then when you hit recipe or training, it will generate all of your recipe costing cards or training cards that you selected on that main page all at once, instead of having to individually go through each one of them. So it looks like this. I can export this in an Excel form for my back of the house recipes. And then again, I have a history icon. So if I want to see the history on a specific item, I can click on it one time so it's highlighted blue. Click on history, and if there was any history within this recipe, it would generate for you. All right. And on this main screen, the last thing I want to mention is this uses inactive. You can see. So this specific CS onion relish compote uses an inactive product. I can double click on the recipe. And from there, it tells you exactly which ingredient is made inactive. So you can see with the all-American cheeseburger that we need to replace the CS onion relish compote because it's inactive. I can double click on it, type in the new item, select it, and when I hit save, now my product has been up to date. This is how you add recipe costing cards into Restaurant Systems Pro. If you guys have any questions, concerns, please contact us. Thanks so much, guys, and have a wonderful, safe day. Bye.